Let's talk to Lowri Turner from Be Reasonable Wales. Lowri, very good to talk to you.
Yes, great to speak to you too.
You obviously are against this proposed change in the law. Just outline why.
Well, we're opposing this proposed ban because we believe that it will criminalise loving, caring parents who discipline their children in a healthy and a moderate way, because we can see no other alternative. The law already protects children from abuse. There can't possibly be anyone in Wales who thinks that isn't already illegal. We're just calling on the Welsh Assembly Government to use some common sense, to allow parents to use common sense and to discipline their children in a way that is reasonable and moderate and is suitable for their family.
Do you agree with me that you have to differentiate between smacking, hitting and beating?
Absolutely. Yes, there is a big difference. And we're not talking about hitting and beating. We are talking about reasonable chastisement, which is, as you said, a light tap on the wrist or a gentle smack on the bottom when a child has misbehaved. And we're also talking, of course, about punishment administered by parents. The comment from one of your callers there about adults can't hit other adults. Well, that ignores the unique relationship between a parent and a child. We're not talking about what just anyone can do. We're talking about this unique relationship. And we feel that it is not the Welsh Assembly Government's place to tell parents how to raise their children. It should be a parent's decision how they choose to discipline their child.
I was talking to a colleague earlier who shall remain nameless, who's got a young child, and I said, do you ever smack him? And he said, no, apart from if he's like reaching to touch a hot oven or something, you would then smack his wrist. And he said the key thing about smacking is never do it when you're angry. And I can see the logic of that. But of course, when you're angry, your brain isn't necessarily acting rationally, is it?
No, that's true. And, we would support that, of course, that it is to be used in a reasonable and moderate way. That's already there in law. But we're also talking about this issue because senior Welsh Assembly members have already stated that this ban would extend further than just smacking. It would, in fact, include any kind of physical contact. So let's give you a scenario that all parents are familiar with. You're in the supermarket with your child and they decide to have a tantrum. They might want a toy that you won't buy for them, whatever it is. They're having a tantrum. They're on the floor. They are potentially endangering themselves and others in the shop. Well, what does a loving, caring parent do? They pick up that child and put them in the trolley where they're safe. Well, that would be considered assault under this smacking, under this ban.
Really? What, even though you haven't actually smacked?
Absolutely, yes. Senior Welsh Assembly members have stated that it would extend beyond just smacking to any physical contact.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm going to ask our next guest about that. Lowri, thank you very much indeed. That's Lowri Turner from Be Reasonable Wales. Professor Sally Holland joins me, the Children's Commissioner for Wales. Professor, thank you very much for coming on the programme. Really appreciate it. Before we go into the generality of what this is, can you just address that last point that Lowri Turner made, that if you have a child that was sort of creating in a supermarket, you didn't necessarily smack the child, but you restrained it and put it in your shopping trolley, that would somehow be against the law under the new proposals?
It's very important that people understand that what's being proposed here is not a new criminal offence at all. It's just removing a defence in the law that parents can use at the moment to say it was reasonable punishment. So the law on common assault will not change. Anything that could be prosecuted at the moment under common assault against an adult or a child will remain the same. No one's suggesting that will change.
So why is it necessary to change the law?
The reason that we need to change the law is that there's a completely unequal situation at the moment where if you feel like hitting another adult because they won't listen to you and you want them to do what you want them to do, then that would be regarded as common assault.
But we're not talking about hitting, we're talking about smacking. There's a difference, isn't there?
Absolutely not. We're talking about common assault, which is the hitting of children. If a husband...
But that's already illegal.
If a husband was to smack a wife, if to use the same phrase, then that would be illegal. What we're talking about is not a new criminalisation, a new criminal offence whatsoever. Just taking away the fact that parents can claim that something that would be prosecuted is not reasonable punishment. And we have to remember that before a case comes to prosecution, it has to pass a number of tests. And I've been reassured on this by the Crown Prosecution Service, by police and social services. The same test would apply. It would need to be in the public interest and the child's best interest. We're not really talking here at all about hundreds of or thousands of parents suddenly becoming under scrutiny or prosecuted. It's simply about giving children and adults the same protection under the law, so they both enjoy the same protection.
So you don't think there is any difference between smacking and hitting?
I think that we should use the whatever's in the law at the moment on common assault. We shouldn't be using physical force to make someone else do what we want them to do.
If a 2-year-old is about to try and touch a hot oven, and the parent slaps the 2-year-old at the back of the legs or on the bottom or on the wrist or wherever, to give it a warning that is something that they shouldn't do, under these new proposals, that parent could be criminalised.
They would be no more at risk of being criminalised in the future under a change in the law than they are now.
Well, what's the point of changing the law then?
Because it wouldn't now be a difference in how you can justify smacking or hitting between adults.
Well, you're arguing against yourself here, aren't you?
No, absolutely I'm not. The real change here is about accelerating the cultural change that we're already seeing amongst parenting in Wales and throughout the UK and the Western world. We're simply saying that so many parents now are choosing not to smack. The majority won't smack.
So what's the need for this law then? I don't understand it. Because if you have literally thousands of parents who ought to be prosecuted for something and the law doesn't allow for that now, I could understand it. But from what you've told us, that there aren't these numbers of parents and the law isn't going to change anything anyway. So what's the point of it?
There are 2 points to it. One is to make sure that we don't actually have legitimised in our legal system the right to call smacking or hitting another person, in this case people are smaller and more vulnerable than us, reasonable punishment.
Well, can you give me some examples?
The second main reason would be to accelerate cultural change, and we've done this with lots.
That's not the role of the law.
It absolutely.
No, it absolutely is not.
It's what we've done with so many things, like drink driving, like seatbelts, like smoking.
Yes, because there were clear problems with those cases. You haven't given me any evidence so far that there is an epidemic of parents in Wales who are smacking their children who can't be prosecuted at the moment.
There's clear evidence, absolutely clear evidence, that smacking is bad for children, that it's bad for their outcomes in general, in the general population. And we often make law changes to improve population health, and that's exactly what we've done around smoking, for example. It's the only law that
where there was a real problem.
This is the only law that I can think of where children actually have less protection than adults in the law. Most times when we distinguish between laws for adults and children, it's to give children more protection. For example, saying they can't buy cigarettes or alcohol till they're 18. In this case, children have less protection than the law in adults. And I find it really sad that in 2017 people would be actively campaigning for the right to hit their children. Imagine if
no, with respect, they are not doing that at all. That is a terrible thing to accuse them of doing. They're campaigning for the right to have the right to chastise children in a way that people have done for many, many years without any harmful effects whatsoever. They're not campaigning to be able to hit their children, as you put it. They're campaigning to continue to have the right to smack their children. And if you can't understand the difference of that, Professor Holland, then I'm not sure you should be talking on this subject.
It's absolutely not true that there is no evidence to say that it does no harm. There are hundreds of studies which show that smacking, if you want to call it that, your children, spanking, it's often called in America, and that's where most of the studies have been done, but not all the studies, has a harmful effect on almost every outcome for children. What we do know is that positive parenting techniques produce much better outcomes for children, and the state's the real role in both protecting children from harm, but also in promoting what we know will give them the best outcomes.
OK, Professor Sally Holland, Children's Commissioner for Wales, thank you very much for coming on the programme.